to the Fan Electric Ghost podcast.
Hello.
You're being recorded, so just to let you know.
Okay.
And so it's not live, but we are recorded. It'll be published after the interview.
Okay, great.
So welcome to the show. We've been interviewing artists all over the world since 2018. We just hit about 29,000 listeners worldwide.
Wow.
And we're part of Spotify. Anchor FM is a Spotify company, just to let you know. Mm-hmm. And we also are on 11 podcast platforms, including Apple and Radio Public and many, many more. So they will be published to all those platforms after we talk.
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, we love having artists. We like to talk to singer-songwriters. We like to talk to people who maybe are not like the biggest artists in the world, but are doing interesting work that we think deserves attention.
Oh, thank you.
So your name, how do you say it? Ataia?
Ataia.
Mm-hmm. And you're in Nashville, or are you in somewhere else?
No, I'm in Nashville right now. I live in LA, but I'm in Nashville for the holidays.
For the holidays, okay. Mm-hmm. Are you a Nashville recording artist, or you just, because it said you relocated in your bio to Nashville at age 16 to pursue music. Is that where you primarily work, or do you work in Los Angeles?
I work in Los Angeles now, but I do come back and forth from LA to Nashville probably a few times a year. But with the pandemic and everything, it's been longer than normal. Yeah,
because I know Nashville is a big hub for a lot of musicians, and just because all the studios and recording artists and session musicians around you do a lot of good work that maybe even it's more advantageous than even being in Los Angeles. Though Los Angeles has the same thing kind of vibe.
It's definitely like I'm forever grateful for Nashville and getting here at 16 because it definitely helped shape me and prepare me for LA.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I'm a New England guy, so I mean I live in New Hampshire, but I end up playing my brand of music more in New York City just because where I live is more of a folk kind of music area, and electronic kind of progressive. New wave is not really the biggest thing going on here.
Yeah.
So I usually have to go to, clubs in Manhattan and in the Bronx and, different parts of New York to get an audience.
Yeah.
Which is cool. But I still write in my studio in New Hampshire. But yeah, people, they do your music wherever you're going to do it, and then you find your audience.
Exactly. Yeah. And each place, I mean, you find a different audience. But yeah, there's definitely certain niches.
So when your bio says you got into music like age 16, but I'm going to ask you, what age did you actually get into music?
Yeah.
When did you actually get into thinking that you wanted to do music?
Yeah. So when I came into the world and I was just like, all I want to do is sing. So pretty much since I was born. And I was lucky enough to have a dad who was a musician. And so I got to kind of learn more from him, like how to write songs and, all of that stuff. So I started writing at a very young age. I mean, I started writing probably at 6. And then I wrote my first official song when I was 9. And so, yeah, he really helped me kind of realize that this is definitely what I want to do, and what I came to Earth for. So a very long time, but professionally when I was 16.
That's good. So what did your father, was he a singer-songwriter, or did he play an instrument?
Yes, he actually he was an insane guitar player. He used to play with John Lennon, and he was in Elephant's Memory, if you know who that is. But it's so he was in that band. He lived that whole rock and roll lifestyle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And to have somebody with that level,
yeah,
that would really make you they would understand when you want to get into music, and not like a parent would say why you want to do that.
Exactly.
You would definitely have more encouragement for somebody that came from that.
Exactly. Yeah. And and I think he he showed me what was possible. And man, he believed in me like nobody else. I mean, I always say if it wasn't for my dad, because I feel like, I'm sure you've experienced this, but when you're growing up and people kind of steer you away from that.
Yeah, well, art is never the thing that's, well, that's something you do as a hobby. right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
if you don't have an artist, you know,
I'm not sure I understand.
sorry,
Oh, no,
Siri.
you're good. I know she does that to me all the time.
Yeah, I got my Apple Watch, and then suddenly she chimed in. I'm like, okay, I didn't
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
her.
Yep.
Thank you, Siri. But
Mhm.
so yeah, it's just like my parents are not musicians,
Mhm.
and a lot of people. My grandpa was though, so my grandpa he could pick up anything, and so
Mhm.
he actually, and you know, when he saw I could do the same type of thing, he said he told my parents, he's like, there's nothing wrong with like music. I mean, it's part like the African American tradition, going to
Yeah.
bluesmen and jazz and everything. There's nothing wrong with that,
Mhm.
but you know, there's a tendency to say, oh well, that's not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
And so it's really cool that you had your father, you know, really understand you. That's cool.
Mhm. I very much lucked out with that.
So you've been working on music since you were 16, then, and
Yeah.
actually being encouraged by a parent, and that's a really good thing. You don't know how many artists I've talked to where their parents didn't encourage them,
Oh, I know.
and
Yeah.
it was always like a fight. You know,
Yeah.
it was always like they're like you know, the black sheep. They're like on the outside, you know, within their own families, and then they got to try to find their own community.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. A different take on it than most of the people we've talked to have not had that situation.
Wow, really? Okay. Yeah, I am so grateful, and that's one of the things that I just am continuously always grateful for, because I don't think I would, be or doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for them, and especially
Mhm.
my mom. I mean, I got an opportunity when I was 16, and I was in a really bad neighborhood, and I was going down the wrong path, and I got an opportunity, and my mom was like, "Okay, we're going to move." Didn't question it, just was like, "We're getting out of here." So, I mean, I have so much to owe to her too.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you realized at age 16 you had a talent. Your father probably saw it in you too.
Mhm.
Um, and so did you? What did you start writing? You know, are you primarily a vocalist, or do you play an instrument as well? Do you play guitar? Do you play piano? Or are you primarily your voice is your instrument?
I kind of dabble a little bit of both, like just enough to write a song. But I'm not an expert at piano or guitar, but just, enough to get me going. So definitely writing and vocal. Um, that's usually what I start with.
That's what, like, a lot of people. I've always had this kind of conversation with other musicians, and it's like singer songwriters. Sometimes you don't have to be technically like the best guitar player
Mm-mm.
or piano player, but as a singer songwriter, because it's your idea, right?
Yeah.
Because you're putting that vision, and you're not just singing somebody else's. Like you're just not just writing a top line; you're writing the whole song.
Yeah.
Sometimes that your ability, maybe you're not Hendrix, or you're not, you know, Coltrane, or you're not, you
Hmm.
know, Frank Zappa,
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah, the fact that it's you
Hmm.
sometimes actually can be worth more than what some people even think, you
Yeah.
know.
And a lot of times too, I'm not even near an instrument when I get inspired. And it's just the strangest thing. Like I'm sure you can relate to, but like, certain times, especially when I drive, but that's when I get so much, I'll just have like something
Ideas.
downloaded into me, and I just have to write it all out and take out a voice note and just start writing and
Oh, you
writing
do.
and
So you
writing.
do you do it like a voice memo when you get that, or
Hmm.
do you just try to write it down, or you use your
I
phone
do a
to
voice
kind of capture?
I do a voice memo if I'm driving. But if I'm somewhere where I can stop, I'll write it down. But
Yeah.
I try to just let it out as soon as it hits me, even if I'm in the middle of a store, because I know that moment can like slip away. And it's such a precious thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Your songs are like, I know Prince used to say songs were his children,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and you know, he never had children, but he tried. But he like a lot. He did actually treat his music like very close, like they were really part of him.
Hmm.
That they really kind of metaphorically were his children,
Yeah.
um, because he put that much passion into it. And you know, I think when you're a singer songwriter, how you come about a song. What I've learned is I've asked people like, "What's your process?" But like as a songwriter myself, my process can be like different. The song, whatever serves the song.
Yeah.
You know, one day I might be at my Moog and it's gonna trigger me writing the song. The other day I might be outside, you know, and I
Hmm.
just come up with a poem or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was wondering, like, are you the type of songwriter that comes from like you use dreams, or you use poetry, or you use your diary, or you just kind of you pull out of the ether from your overall experience, and you just feel things, and then whatever that triggers that feeling maybe triggers a song?
Yeah, so honestly, it varies, but a lot of times, like I will just randomly get hit with um just a full, like, I can hear it, I can see it. Sometimes I'll have dreams about it, and it'll wake me up in the middle of that. Like, I've written a lot of songs where in my dream I can, like, it wakes me up because it's so loud in my dream.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I have to get up before and just like start writing it down and start like doing a voice or whatever I can do until I can go back to sleep. So sometimes,
That's interesting.
yeah, it's it is very interesting. But yeah, so sometimes it's like that, and then other times it's just like I get striked, or it's like I do a lot of in a lot of sessions like a week. So half the time I'll let myself get hit with one of those inspiration, and I keep them in a folder for sessions or like for, certain things like that.
Yeah, it was interesting. There was a story about Hendrix where his brother was saying that sometimes when he was playing on the Chitlin circuit, where he was like backing up Little Richard and the Isley Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
he would go off in the middle of one of their sessions and do something that really didn't fit the song.
Mm.
And they'd ask him, what are you doing? And he said, well, if that something is in the wind and it's out there, I don't want to miss it,
Yep.
so I just can't stop.
Yeah.
I have to kind of go with it.
Yeah.
And then people, that didn't work as a session musician.
Yeah.
So it kind of showed he really needed to be his own
Mm-hmm.
person, and he became his own person. But like he just couldn't stop himself, and
Yeah.
like if he felt like that inspiration, he'd just go with it,
Yeah.
even if he was with the Isley Brothers or with Little Richard, and it didn't really fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it kind of showed that he was kind of like pulling like the muse, feeling it and going with it.
Yeah.
And I think all like creative people kind of, whether you're a painter or an actor or a musician, there's a part of that in what you do.
Definitely. And I think every individual has their thing, has their unique formula that is purely them and that gets them going. And I think once you find that thing, keep doing that thing, you know? Um,
Yeah, you get that groove.
mhm.
You got to hit your stride.
Yeah.
As an artist, sometimes you get that convergence where suddenly you find your Ringo, John Paul, and George, and you become a Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or as a solo artist, you hit that song,
Mhm.
that this boom
Yeah.
that launches you,
Yep.
or you find that producer or that other person that builds the duo, or sometimes it's just yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes like with Prince, it was just him pretty much.
Mhm.
But he was able to find people, but most of it was him.
Yep.
um, and it's really, the confidence as a singer songwriter to kind of know that you're making the right decisions.
Yeah.
You got to kind of know what you want to do because it's your vision.
Oh, oh
And
yeah. You
yeah,
definitely have to
yeah.
have a clear vision of what you want and who you are, you know. Which isn't the easiest thing, you know. Um,
That's a hard
yeah,
thing, I think, because in today's world
yeah,
of Spotify playlists and producers who can come up with ready-made
mm-hmm,
grooves and clips, you could suddenly get under a producer's wing and you might sound like everybody in their
yep,
stable.
exactly,
And then you're like, okay, is that really what I want to do, or do I want to have my
yep,
own take on it? And it's kind of, there's a lot of pressure, I think, in an industry to kind of do that song that's more, maybe not more, not you.
yep,
It maybe it's a piece of you, but it's really more of that other producer.
yeah,
Um, and so there's like, so I was asked the question, like, who are your influences or reference points, or do you feel like you're kind of creating something unique and you don't want to go to? I've actually talked to some artists that kind of don't like that question and kind of want to
yeah,
say that they don't want to be pinned into any kind of one area.
yeah. I agree with that. But I also, I get so inspired by people's stories, I guess. More than well, I don't want to say more than their work because that's, like I get inspired by artists and music all the time. I hear something I'm like, whoa, that's so cool, or that's such a good line. But like just hearing people's resilience, and like really staying true to what they wanted and who they were, regardless of what was happening on the outside of their world. So
Yeah.
that definitely inspires me. Like, oh, if you haven't read Russ, his book, It's All in Your Head, it is such a good book. Um, and I definitely recommend it. It's an incredible book. But yeah, he really
Uh,
inspires me. Yeah.
who else would you want to name check as a reference point, maybe
Um,
for people
I
to kind
love Alicia Keys. I love Drake. uh, I love, oh man, I love so many people. I mean, I genuinely, like, if you look at I have the most random playlists of
of?
all. Like, I literally listen to everything except for maybe like Screamo. But um, yeah, I would say like the
Well, I think
top.
that's a good place to be today. Because
Yeah.
I mean, if you see what's going on in music today, I'm kind of a child. Show my age. I'm in my 50s. I'm a child of like the
Oh
60s
yeah,
and
me too.
70s. So
Yeah.
a lot of what I do is based on bands like Yes
Yeah.
and Genesis. Because I'm a keyboard player. So, but I'm kind of old school keyboard
Mm-hmm.
player. So I'm talking about Hammond B3s and Moog
Yeah.
and Prophet Fives and Jupiter
Yeah.
Eights. So I'm talking about like very experimental, like Joy Division, or talking about New
Mm-hmm.
Order, Depeche Mode, David Bowie and Brian Eno, guys like that. Even Peter Gabriel,
Yeah.
in the
Oh
early
yeah.
Genesis and the really art rock
Mm-hmm.
Genesis. That's kind of my zone, but I like to mix it with things like maybe like Sun Ra,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a very interesting American jazz band, or a little bit of Miles Davis, some Funkadelic,
Yeah.
some Prince, some Hendrix. And so when I came up with this idea of expansive sound, it's like a merging of anything that's cool. If you want progressive rock, hip hop, rap, punk rock, I like bands like The
Yeah.
Replacements, the Husker
Yeah.
Du, and the Sex Pistols. I think the punk aesthetic, like you get somebody like a Kurt Cobain, you might not be a grunge guy or a grunge woman, but that kind of honesty that Kurt
Yep.
had, it's kind of like a Neil Young,
Mm-hmm.
Crazy
Oh
Horse.
yeah.
That kind of authenticity I think is
Mm-hmm.
informative, because if you're a musician and you see like what Neil did with Crazy Horse and what Kurt did with Nirvana,
Yeah.
there's always room for that in music, in my
I
opinion.
agree. I so agree. And yeah, and I think and that everything you just said is so true. I mean, we pull from all the things, that inspired us when we were kids, and all of our influences based off our parents, our friends, our school, what we were listening to. So yeah, it definitely and it plays a role with everything. And it's funny too how you can hear it sometimes where you're just like, whoa, I have no idea where that came from. But you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're an artist. If you're an artist, they start putting the layers on their painting. They might be pulling some Monet, they might be pulling some
Yeah.
Rembrandt. I mean, they might be pulling from what they got taught as an
Mm-hmm.
artist, or what they're feeling, and it's gonna, not that they want to copy it, but it's just like a musician. I mean, you might somehow pull a Coltrane
Yep.
phrase. I might pull a Coltrane phrase, or pull a keyboard run from a Miles Davis song without realizing that
Yep.
I did it. Not that I wanted to copy it, but somehow it came into my consciousness and I
Yeah.
did it. And it's just like I played, I didn't sample it. And so, yeah, it's like when you're a keyboard player and you have all these reference points from what you've learned, the phrases just tend to come out of
Yeah.
here and there, when you're writing. And I think that's the cool thing about music, is like sometimes people can tell you like you didn't even realize that you
Yeah.
did
Yeah. Oh,
that.
yeah. Like, especially in sessions where if you do something you're like, and somebody's like, wait, isn't that blah, 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 or something you're like, what?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't even
Yeah.
know, because it's kind of just coming
Same.
subconsciously. There's a lot
Exactly.
of stuff happening.
Yep.
And I think that's really cool, because in today's world where you can sample
Yeah.
explicitly,
Yeah.
I understand that. But then when you're kind of like, I'm kind of an old school person where I play with like people who are actually playing the
Yeah.
instrument,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like it's cool when somebody actually comes in with a sax and they're actually pulling like a phrase from like a 52
Yeah.
jazz record, and I
Yeah.
happen to know it. And I was like, wow, you're pulling that. That's cool. We could rework that. We could do this, and I think that's part of like everything we do is like you have to admit, like if you look at a band like Led Zeppelin, they pulled from all these great classic blues guys like Led Belly and Robert Johnson, and sometimes they didn't name check
Yeah.
it, but they used it, and I think it's important to kind of like if you realize that you should kind of give
I
the
agree.
due.
I agree. I so do.
But yeah, so in your writing style, I guess it is kind of hard to pin down. I always ask people like, what is your writing style and your genre? Like, what would you say if somebody wanted to pin you down? Like, okay, well, if we're going to market your music, what genre are
Um,
you in? Is that something you would like to answer, or you say, well, no, I'm not really into one
I'm definitely
particular
not
genre?
into one genre, but I will say I lean more in pop. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, you have to kind of know where you're going to market
exactly,
yourself, I guess, to know
exactly.
where you're going.
Now if I'm just writing, man, I can write whatever genre ever. But for me in particular, I usually most like my music is in the pop category.
Yeah, because I was listening to a track that I found
Oh
on
yeah.
Spotify. Yeah, your
Mm-hmm.
fine track, and it's interesting because it's got a kind of like a modern take on pop music, but it's got guitar, it's got the
Yeah.
keyboards, it's got the feel. I can kind of hear like the vocal
Yeah.
treatment by using some vocal techniques with
Mm-hmm.
modern capabilities. So it is in that kind of
Yeah.
modern pop, but it had a little bit more guitar
Oh
than some
yeah, and
modern
I
pop.
love guitar. I all of my songs
Yeah.
always have guitar on them for the most part, unless it's like a piano ballad or something. But yeah, I'm a guitar
Yeah,
person.
yeah. It's good to have to have that type of instrument. To me, the piano and the guitar kind of are great for singer
Mm-hmm.
songwriters because they can convey
Yeah.
emotion and they can set like a paint. I always like the idea of the term like sound
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
painting,
love that. Yeah.
and, and it kind of comes from like two people that I really inspired by. But like Hendrix, when they talked about Electric Ladyland, and they asked him like why do we hear all these like like you hear
Mm-hmm.
ocean, you hear birds, and he said, "What's a sound painting?"
Mm-hmm.
And I read this article like he told the people asked him like, yeah, it's a sound painting. And I'm like, wow, that's a really good
Yeah.
way to describe it because if you listen to it, it
Yeah.
is. And then George Martin also talked about it when he was talking about the Beatles and like Sgt. Pepper. He was talking about how like he had done all these Peter Sellers comedy records that had all this layering. And because the interesting thing about comedy records with Peter Sellers is like there's a lot of special
Yeah.
effects. There's a
Yeah.
lot of layering. And then the Beatles kind of took the advantage of that. George Martin had that capability of doing all that layering that was done for those comedy records and applied it to like Sgt. Pepper,
Yeah.
which was actually a new idea to actually apply that technique to the pop genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it created this whole new kind of album format where you could use the studio as an instrument.
Yeah. Oh,
And it's like a sound painting, and he actually describes like if I recorded the Beatles like they were in Berlin, they would just sound like a live unit,
yeah.
which they do on some of the early
Mm-hmm.
records. But then when you get the Sgt. Peppers, they actually use the studio and create these kind of sound
Ugh,
paintings.
that's so cool.
Um, and that to me opens up the whole pop era. Is opened up, and you get bands like Yes and
Yeah.
Genesis and Pink Floyd
Mm-hmm.
because of that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, it's so
It's
true. And it's so like sound painting. It automatically puts an imagery. Like when you're saying that, like I already can like it's like a painting. Like you literally can see it.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah, I mean, what
yeah.
the cool thing about today's DAWs and multi-track recording, I like to use multi-track hardware
Yeah.
recorders, but the DAW basically does the same thing. Um, but yeah, the fact that when you start to plan out and layer, you can create like a audio movie. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
like if you're a really good songwriter, you can paint that picture
100.
of
Yep.
that mood
Oh
and make
yeah.
somebody feel like they're at a brook or they're in an apartment or they're in that
Oh
scene.
yeah. I mean, I think
And
that's just like that's one of the biggest like it's just so beautiful that like you can say one word and instantly catch somebody's attention and it takes them right back to a certain moment or to a certain feeling or
yeah.
any it's just like it's
So, what are your
amazing.
thoughts on like music videos that kind of interpret that for the person? Because I think that was
Yeah.
one of the things when MTV happened that some songwriters were like, well, I think it kind of takes away from what I was originally doing.
Yeah.
because then it's framing that song for everybody and saying this is what it's about.
Yeah.
And then then it kind of takes it away from the audience, because it says, well, this is how the director or the artist interpreted this song, and then it's kind of framed for you. And I understand it's a promotional effort, and you can be very artistic with it. But the cool thing about the audio, even sitting and listening to vinyl, was you can kind of just sit in that room with your vinyl record and kind of imagine what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a beauty in both. I think, even sometimes when you hear a song, like, I'm going to have a completely different interpretation than you are, or maybe we'll have the same, but it will have different, spins on it here and there. But, yeah, I think it's so hard because, a lot of artists, they have that vision, they have that story with the song.
Yeah.
And they want to express that. And I think that it's a beautiful thing, but I also think there's a beauty too of being like, well, I want other people to have their story with it, because it is like, it's, coming from your diary, but you're kind of offering it up and being like, well, I want you to be in this experience with me, however form that may take for you,
Yeah, I mean, you can get like a rock opera.
Exactly. Yeah.
You could see like a Paranoid Android video from Radiohead, which is a very classic
Yeah.
classic. Because it actually has this kind of weird, kind of rock opera concept thing to it, and it's so the video, the cartoon is, you can interpret that cartoon, and so that's kind of cool because you could look at that, and everybody can kind of review that, because it's another artist interpreting the song in the way they interpreted it. And even people who've watched the cartoon can interpret the cartoon to have different layers of meaning. And so that's interesting. But if you kind of are very explicit in a song and you have actors kind of train, then you can kind of lock it in, and then there's no deviation of what it really is. I think I've always kind of gone for the more esoteric kind of Andy Warhol perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of throw something very artistic that's kind of out of left field and make it not totally understandable, so then it still has room for interpretation.
That's so interesting. Okay, I love that. Yeah. I definitely, now that I'm like really thinking about it, I do love very personable like videos. It feels like you're getting a glimpse of their life, but I'm also a storyteller, so I love observing. So that might be a reason why I like that so much, but I do know people that hate seeing videos from the artist's point of view, like where it's so direct to where they like they can't,
well, I mean, sometimes if you're telling a story,
yeah,
and there are
exactly.
some so some classic videos that actually tell like a story,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
it's like a mini movie, okay,
Yeah.
it's going to be a mini movie, that's what it is. And so you're kind of, okay, I'm getting drawn into it, and that's a cool thing if it's done really well, and
I agree.
it kind of the other piece, because I'm more into progressive rock, so I'll go for like the Ziggy Stardust review and like do something kind of space alien weird Pink Floyd interpretation.
Oh, man, Pink Floyd, definitely will take you on a trip.
And so that kind of stuff is kind of cool.
It's really
to
cool.
have that view. But it's, you can use the art however you want, because there's so many things today you can do. On Instagram, a lot of people get brought into an artist because you can do little clips. And some people's clips are like themselves, the full band singing, and then some people's clips are like these art kind of rock things. And you can get the different view of like the different artists out there. I think it's been really cool for artists to have like a place like Instagram, because it seems like musicians are all over Instagram. Almost every person I've actually interviewed, I've gotten from Instagram.
No, and that's like the one thing that's so cool is that, like, I mean, you can literally see somebody's complete vibe, through their Instagram and like their story and their music and their work. And it's just, that's what's really cool. Like, I find people through Instagram all the time.
Yeah, it seems like the artist, musician, I found actors, musicians, painters, and I'll interview anybody in the arts. So we don't just interview, musicians. We tend to do that more, but we started to interview
Mm-hmm.
actors because we found, well, actors have the same kind of
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
They do the same type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then their roles are like, like somebody's album, their a movie or a
Yeah.
TV role is just as artistic, and it's, getting their interpretation. That's really, I've always been very impressed.
Me too. Me too.
With anybody, the creative
Yep.
person, I love getting their input.
Mm-hmm.
So when you write, because of COVID now, are you primarily just using your digital audio workstation, or are you able to get to a studio and do
So
stuff? Are you doing like home studio work, or
yeah.
more
So
studio?
I have like select people that I work with in person, that are kind of just like my core group. And then most of my sessions are on Zoom, which has been an interesting experience. But yeah, so they'll be like through the computer, which is it's interesting.
Yeah, yes, it's the new
Yeah,
normal.
yeah. It's weird. It takes a while to get used to, but after a while it's like anything, it's
Did you previously mostly do like in studio, physical studio work before
yes,
COVID,
yeah.
or were you
Mainly,
doing it before?
yeah, go to the studios or yeah, wherever my sessions were. So yeah, so that's been weird because I'm such an in-person person, and that's how I just get to feel the
Yeah,
room and the people and like so that's been weird doing that through a
yeah,
screen. It's challenged me for sure, but it's cool, to just be like, I mean, the perk of it is you don't have to worry about parking. So
well, yeah, I've had some musicians have had a really hard time. I've talked to, like,
yeah.
rock bands, and like
Session
kind of
players, yeah,
grunge and punk
I can,
rock bands.
yeah.
Yeah, I've had trouble with like
Yeah,
drummers being very frustrated because they've not been able to kind of do
I
what they were
know.
doing pre-COVID.
Yeah,
Like if you're
yeah.
like a full drummer and you're in that kind of
Mm-hmm.
rock unit, that experience in the studio is primarily, or in the rehearsal space, is how the band's
Yeah.
actually composed. Um, and then trying to do it over Zoom when you're a drummer, the lag doesn't
No.
work
Oh
very
no. Yeah.
for a lot of, for a lot of drummers. It's like
Yeah.
very difficult. Um, sometimes they just have to take the tape and
Yep.
do it in their studio
Yep.
and then send it back, because it doesn't work. But yeah, it's just interesting because, before COVID, I was doing a lot of collaboration with people from other countries and, other parts of the country. In Los Angeles, I was working on an album in 2017, and I'd never met the person. She was an actress, and we did a whole album in this kind of new normal that people do now. I was doing in 2017, just because, I couldn't get there. And so I've been doing that for a couple of years. So it's interesting. It's like, wow, everybody's getting into what I had been doing since 2017. But yeah, I think it's interesting. People find a way to get into however they're going to record music. But now people are finding that, you can actually do it. You can actually put out work. I mean, a lot of work is actually getting put out. So are you planning on any new projects for what you've been doing? Oh, did I lose you? Are you still there? Oh, you seem to have lost the signal. I can't hear you. I'm actually gonna send a link again. We seem to have lost the connection. This is Fam Electric Ghost, and I think this is a informative message for those of us who are financially challenged and need help making decisions. So, all potential homebuyers looking for refinance options need a tool to aid them with navigating the financial wilderness of the mortgage industry. Now, Mortgage Calculator Info gives you a no pressure, no sales pressure opportunity to discover mortgage related finance topics from the comfort of your laptop or your smartphone. So if you go out to https www.mortgagecalculators.info, and we'll actually have that link available. Again, I'll say it, https www.mortgagecalculators.info. there are multiple calculators. There's a monthly payment calculator, minimum income requirement calculator, home loan limit, and a DTI to figure out your front end and back end debt to income ratios. That's more complicated once you get into this. Now, even though I own a home, if I'm looking into a tool that I use personally, is the loan limit calculator that allows me to see what it would take to trade up to a better home. So I think you should check out, www.mortgagecalculators.info, because magazines like Forbes and business channels like CNBC recommend that you take control of your finances. And the first step to get a better understanding of your mortgage knowledge with tools is going to a free site like this to be able to look at it on your own time. And then from there, if you want to go deeper into financial analysis, you could always get an investment advisor. But it's good to kind of get yourself versed on tools like this that don't cost any money, allow you to check out, without any pressure, and do some analysis on your own. So you're doing your homework before you go and make another decision. So it's the first step in that kind of path. So we encourage all of our PEG fans, musicians and artists and creators. We need to be smart about what we do for financing because we need to fund our projects. So being smart about your financial portfolio is a good idea, even though it might not be something that you're primarily interested in. And I think all of our fans could appreciate that as well. So thank you for listening to this little informative statement, and enjoy the rest of the program. Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. Oof.
Yeah, it's this technology. You never know if there's so many people are home that sometimes, and so many people are doing these podcasts that sometimes the bandwidth kind of has a problem. I haven't had this issue too many times. It's happened maybe once in the last year, but you never know. So we can start where we were. I think we were just talking about like recording and how you record, and you were saying you were working at home and doing Zoom calls and things like that.
Yes. So what was yeah, okay. So I have a lot of sessions through Zoom now because of today's world, but yeah, I definitely prefer in-person ones. But I think when you find your people too, you can do sessions from anywhere, anything,
So do you end up doing anything like in like Pro Tools or FL Studio
Yeah,
where you
so
do your
I'll
vocals
cut,
and then send them to like a top line back to like
yeah,
a
so
producer?
I'll cut like a rough vocal. But that's just like for like a good little demo to set out. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll cut like vocals or something like that in my own space.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of send them out, and then, they do their magic on it, just get like a good solid demo, to pitch and stuff.
Yeah. So that's your. So are you working on like in this kind of Spotify playlist world? Are you primarily focused on creating singles, or are you working on a bigger EP or album?
I lost you again.
Oh, you lost me again?
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, it's like in and out. Like I can hear when you're talking, but it's like a robotic.
Oh, am I back yet?
Yeah, I don't know. Let me see if maybe I have
Hello?
something open.
There? Hello? We lost you again.
All right.
Too
Oh,
bad. Are you back?
okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay. So I guess I was saying, are you working on just singles, or are you working on like a full like EP or album?
I'm working on yeah, like multiple multiple
Multiple
projects.
projects.
Yeah. Um which have been in the making for a very long time. So I'm excited for 2021. That's when they'll finally be coming out. But yeah, I actually just got the video back today. So that was really cool and exciting. I'm just excited to put stuff out into the world again, you know, it just feels like
Wow.
a,
So you've got some stuff coming for the 2021.
yeah, I do. A bunch of stuff. Thank God.
So you like
Very excited.
working on I don't know, in the rap world they call them features, where you're working with other
Yeah,
artists.
so
Are you
I
going to be
have
on other singles, or are you going to be with
hmm
other artists?
yeah, so I have a lot of singles coming out with other artists. And then I have some K-pop stuff coming out too.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's really cool. And then just my own personal artist project is coming out too. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Is that
Yeah.
a full record, or is there EPA?
It's not a full record. I mean, I definitely have enough for multiple records, but um it's more of just like a like singles release
Oh,
leading up
plan.
to EP. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I tend to. I've been talking to a lot of artists. I mean, there's some guys who are still doing like full records because they kind of into that vinyl thing, and they've got some like an audience that will buy it. And
Mm-hmm.
then a lot of people are doing, if they do a bigger project, it's an EP rather than a full album.
Yeah. And I just love to like I don't know, like I love every song, you know, being a whole experience in itself, you know? And
Yeah, you get the audience to focus on that one song. If you throw it
yeah,
out in a project, they might miss some of them.
exactly. Yeah, and I just love that. Like I love having the video for it and the vibe for it and like being able to, you know, kind of share that part with somebody just through, you know, one song and my visuals for it and everything. So yeah, it's really cool and it's fun because you get a little like creative with each one, you know, and like a different aspect of yourself, which I really love.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a single, you can do the artwork for it,
Exactly.
you do a
Yeah.
video
Yeah.
for it. If you do an album, sometimes you don't have the budget or the ability to create separate
Yeah.
artwork for each song,
Yeah.
you know. So or even videos for each song. You know, maybe one or two of them get to have a video.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it gets you. Yeah, and in this world with people's, the way they listen to music, having singles seems to be. This is kind of like, it seems to me like we're in an era that's kind of like the '50s, and singles kind of ruled the '50s. You really didn't have albums. You had albums, but they were really collections of singles.
Yeah.
And you don't, when you get to the Beatles, then the album format kind of comes into full fruition, and envision, of how you can use an album. And we've kind of gone away from that a little bit and gone back to like single focus because of playlist and because of the way people listen to
Yeah.
music on these streaming services, um, which is like a double-edged sword because it allows you to get to this really big
Yep.
audience,
Yeah.
but then you don't get that kind of the ability to put these bigger ideas out
Yeah.
sometimes, because there's maybe not enough tolerance for that much content from one particular
Mm-hmm.
person.
Well, and I think too, it's what, you know, it's what makes stuff like that when people do release like a full visual album and like full, you know, it's so cohesive and like, you know, you can tell each song is leading to the next part of the story. It makes it so much
Yeah,
more precious and, you know, and I feel like you appreciate it more because it is a rare thing now. You know, it is a very like single world and, you know, um TikTok like songs, you know,
yeah,
so
everything,
yeah.
yeah, 15 seconds,
Yeah,
30 seconds
exactly. Yeah.
reels.
So I
We're
feel
kind of
like
in the 15-second, 30-second real world.
yeah, exactly. And so like for me, like, you know, I personally like how I write, I love putting something into, you know, making a story with the song, but um, you know, other people around me and other writers I work with, you know, I appreciate their work and their albums and like, you know, their story so much more because it is a rare thing now. And yeah, so I definitely I, you know, absorb it more.
Is like the other question I always ask is like your collaboration with other artists. Sounds like you're actually doing a lot of collaboration with your K-pop and the other stuff that you're doing coming out in 2021. Um, and I always ask people like, okay, do you cross collaborate into different genres? Where
Yes.
you definitely with
Yeah.
K-pop you
Yep.
are. Are you crossing into like EDM and
Yeah.
trance and hip hop and all that
I've done
too.
a lot, definitely hip hop. I've done a lot of hip hop sessions. And I've done country ones. I've even done like Christian music ones too. I've done, yeah, like a little bit of everything.
Well, I think as an artist, it's good to kind of be in that session mode. You know, like if you think about like the Funk Brothers and Motown, they were like on
Yeah.
everything. They were playing like, you know, on all the
Yeah.
tracks, and there's a lot of that in the history of some of the big, great record labels, you know, Sun Records and Decca, and like they had these like house
Yeah.
bands, and they were playing on like everything. And so there was some country, there's some rock, there was some funk, there's some soul, and all the guys were kind of cross pollinated, playing on
Yeah.
everything. Um, and that's a good way to kind of come up as a musician, because if you've got the skill to play in one genre and then be able to play on another, I think it just adds to your own
Yeah. And
capability.
I think it's so cool too because you're talking about actors and stuff. And I think that's also what's so cool with music is that you can, you can hear somebody else express what they're going through that day and you can kind of make it your own, and like express it. And you can really lean into whatever genre that is. Like if it's a country song, like, oh, cool, I get to like be a country artist today, or like,
Yeah, you get to put a little Willie
yeah,
Nelson or Johnny Cash
get to use like a little,
Glenn Campbell.
some words that I wouldn't typically use, So it's it's really cool. It's really cool that you can just put on a different hat and be like, cool, like I get to experience this, reality today. So,
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about music is some people, some musicians I've been, they're kind of purist in a
hmm
particular genre. I'll run into a punk rocker like they only want to play like
yeah.
Ramones. Yeah, and I was okay. That's somewhat limiting because you can only go so far with that. But some people want to be a pure. I've been running into blues guys that all they want to do is Delta blues.
Yeah.
Okay, well there's a lot to that, and there's certain types of jazz where it's like, well, there's a lot in that genre you probably never finish. Um, advancing. What you could do. So yeah, it's just kind of where somebody's head's at or where they
Yeah,
are.
exactly. And it's such like a cool thing. Like I will say like it's really, every session is to an extent like a therapy session, and just hearing like somebody else's, day or what they're going through or whatever, and like finding something tangible for, all of us to create together to kind of give that emotion up, it's so cool. So, yeah.
Yeah, I always thought of like my music as like my own like
Yeah, it
psychotherapist,
is 100%.
because it's like because a lot of what I go through, I
Yep.
put everything into my sessions in my home
Yeah.
studio, and you can kind of like if you kind of put it that you don't have limits on yourself or where you can go, like if you become like free,
Yes.
uh, and I think a lot of times like musicians after a while you kind of get in this zone where you feel like I have complete artistic freedom. I'm going to go wherever I want to
Yeah.
go. And I think when you hear some of the great artists like Coltrane and Davis and Hendrix that
Yep.
went there, they were able to say, I don't care what anybody wants of me. I'm kind of going to go where I feel I should go.
Yeah.
And that is when if you feel like really good, I think as a musician, when you feel free enough that you can do
Yep.
that and put it down, I think that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I completely agree. And it's so true. I think like what you just said, it's literally the magic key is, not putting yourself in a box, and allowing that expression to run through you, whichever way it runs through.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a great artist like Prince, I think the big thing with him that people maybe didn't realize is like he could have kept on just doing 1999 and Purple Rain
Yeah.
over and over and
Yeah.
over again, and he chose
hmm
not to do that, to a lot of fans'
Yep.
consternation. But he chose not to do that, and that actually made him a great artist because he was able to go places. Maybe some fans didn't want to stay with him, but he was able to go to different areas because he didn't let that control what he was
Yeah.
going to do. Uh, I think that's a hard thing to do because there's a lot of reasons as a musician that once you have a formula, you might stick with it.
because
there's a lot of pressure in the industry sometimes to stick with.
So much pressure, which is another thing that I love about today is that like, so many people have proven, the opposite of that, being like, no, I want to do
Yeah.
this now. I want to do that now. And it, being,
Yeah, not on the label, not being tied to a label.
the
Sometimes now
freedom.
are a lot of us are more
Yeah.
free to say, if I want to do a collaboration with a hip hop artist, I don't have to ask,
Yeah.
the head of the label to give me
Yeah.
permission to do that. I can go off and I
Yep.
can do that. And that is something that, if you look back in old history, even a guy like Prince, if he wanted to do something that, those guys didn't want to do at Warner's, they
Yep.
wouldn't let him do it. Like he wanted to give out a record in Guitar
Yeah.
Magazine, like a
Yep.
guitar trio. He just did this thing he did, and then he said no. He wanted to do like a full
Yeah.
hip hop album.
Yep.
They said no, and that's part of the reason why he did what he did during those times. He changed his names because he had so many things he wanted to do. He was doing jazz, he was doing hip hop, he was doing straight rock, and sometimes he'd want to go that way,
Yep.
and they wouldn't allow him, even though he's big as he was,
Yeah.
to do it.
Yep.
And so that's why he kind of went off, and people thought he went, too far. But you look back at it, and there's a lot of things he did that actually, kind of where we are now. Selling music on the net, not being on a label,
Yeah.
doing it direct to the customer. He kind of was like a pioneer in some of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool like how you can literally go in a closet right now, make whatever you're feeling and just put it out tonight. Like there's just
Yeah.
such a freedom in that. And it's so cool. Um so yeah,
But then the other side of it is like, how do you monetize that
I
in
know.
a world
Yeah.
that sometimes only pays you like 0.004 of a penny
Yep.
for a play?
And it's
Um,
super, super saturated too because you are capable of doing that. So
so how do you get
yeah.
to the top? How do you get into licensing? How do you get into, sync
Yeah.
licensing and getting your stuff into video games and
Yeah.
movies and, alternative media? I've been able to get into influence
Yeah.
marketing, in podcasting. And, my primary love is playing like analog synthesizers. And if I wanted to, I'd probably be doing it right now. Um, but in the world is like, okay, you have to do some other things. And I became to love doing these podcasts, even though I love being with my modes. But sometimes you find another way to do something. And I think in this industry now, you can find all different types of ways of still being a creative person,
Yeah.
still getting your work done. Because, okay, I'll have to do time in my podcasting, but then that helps my music.
Yeah.
So then I'll put the time in to do it. And then I get to talk to people like you. I get to
Mhm.
talk to other musicians, which is,
Yeah.
a benefit. I think as a musician, the more musicians you talk to, it's
Oh, it's
actually a good thing.
amazing. And it's such a gift too to be able to connect with people that you haven't met, through the internet and through this, weird thing of, you can just upload something and boom, Um, but I think the number one thing too of like what you're talking about is just like the consistency with it. I'm such a believer that like, if you're staying true to you, you're listening to what your instincts are telling you and you keep going, keep going, keep going, there's no stopping you. And everybody has their journey. But it really is just consistency and resilience, you know.
Yeah, because the once you could be doing something, but if you do it long enough, suddenly you create an audience.
Exactly.
So like
Yeah.
REM, people said, "What is that?" They couldn't hear Michael Stipe. They said, "How can you have a lead singer that you can't hear what
Yeah.
he's saying?" Right? And then it became like, well, that style of music was like the college radio
Hmm.
alternative music. They
Yep.
created a whole genre, and then people came to them. They didn't have to fit in. They created like a whole like
Yep.
genre, um, of that type of music where it was challenging and it was different and you couldn't say it. It sounded like
Hmm.
anything else. Any bands before them like Big Star, like Alex Chilton's
Yeah.
Big Star, or Lou Reed's Velvet Underground. They finally found, almost every band in the 80s, name
Hmm.
check them. you know, that they weren't big in their time, but they ended up inspiring other musicians. So sometimes if you believe in
Yeah,
yourself,
biggest key.
even if you
Yeah.
don't have, yeah, you know, even if you don't happen in
Mm-hmm.
your time, you still have an impact on the
Exactly.
industry, you
And
know.
I think too, it's like, it's again, it's not, putting the pressure of the outside world. It's like you're doing this because this is literally this is how you breathe, you know, and you're
Yeah,
not doing it for an external validation. And obviously that's a hard thing, because you want to please and you want to, be,
yeah. I mean, that's the
yeah,
thing about music is like most musicians, they do it because
yep,
they love to do it. Is like if they thought they were going to be Elvis Presley, they wouldn't, you know, keep on doing it because not everybody's going to be
yeah,
Elvis, you know.
yeah,
You know, not everybody's going to be
no,
Hendrix or not everybody's going to be Jimmy Page, you know, or Carole King or
yeah,
Karen Carpenter, you know. It's not, doesn't happen. But if you believe in yourself, you can get
a hundred
an
percent.
audience, you know. You can build an audience, you can
Well,
build people, you know. Over time, I've built this audience, you know, that follows
yeah,
Phantom Electric Ghost. And it might not be the biggest audience, but I
yeah,
do have one. And that's I think that's what people have to
totally.
understand is like don't try to be Jimmy Page or
No.
Robert Plant, you know,
And
be
like
yourself.
another thing too is that, globally, yeah, you may not be, you know, Led Zeppelin or anything, but to that individual that you're impacting, like to them you are, you know? And
Yeah,
yeah.
your fan like thinks that your fan base, you know, every great, you know, band that I loved, you know, growing up from like you know the Replacements and Husker Do's and you know Black Flags, you know, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sub pop stuff. They weren't super big until Nirvana really
Yeah.
blew up, you know, and it was kind of like this niche, and then suddenly, oh well, we don't like being
Mm-hmm.
big,
Yeah.
but it's like there's this kind of thing. It's like okay, like are you like when you do get successful,
Yeah.
do you hate
Yeah.
it? You know, because it's kind of like the thing is like a lot of us want to get there, and then sometimes if we get there, then we
Yeah.
don't like it. It's kind of we like the journey getting there, but then once they get there, then it's like, well, maybe it's not what I thought it
Yeah.
was.
But
But you hear so many stories about people who had all that passion, and when they got there, it
yeah.
wasn't what they thought it was.
And I think too a little bit of that can be, because that's something, similar to what happened to my dad, but it's, you can lose yourself along the way and you do get caught up in that of that ego game, and what other people are telling you to be and do and say and all that stuff. And so you kind of lose, that voice that is giving you that inspiration and reminding you why you love it and why you're doing this. And I think that's where it can get a lot of very rocky.
Yeah, well, when it becomes it's not fun for you. When
Exactly.
Hendrix was near the end of his time, suddenly, you know, he was kind of nonstop touring. He wasn't able to record what he wanted to do. He kept on having to fulfill
Yeah.
his contracts, and then it's like then it
Yeah.
wasn't fun. You know, as soon as you even Led Zeppelin when they were near the end, it's like it wasn't fun
Exactly.
for John Bonham anymore. He
Yeah.
wasn't happy. You know, while what happened with him is he didn't want
Yep.
to tour that year, and he didn't know how to tell the band he didn't want to do it. And there's a lot of examples of people kind of get stuck on that train because then it
Yeah.
becomes a job. It's not the passion. You got to keep it from becoming. I think Neil Young tried to reach Kurt Cobain and told him, like, hey, if you're not
Yep.
feeling good, just stop. You know, he just told him like, stop, don't do it, don't tour. If you
Yep.
don't want to tour, don't tour. Tell me you're not
Yep.
doing it and take a break. Um, and you just sometimes it's hard to do that. It's
Yeah.
hard to
Oh,
tell
it's
somebody
so
no.
hard.
You know,
And I think it's one of the most important things to learn how to do. But it's incredibly hard because I do feel like, especially in the beginning stage, you say yes and yes and yes, because this is like what you
yeah,
want. This is your everything.
yeah. It's on the path. On the path up, it's
Exactly.
hard to say
Yeah.
no when you're trying to get
Yeah.
there. It's like every step of the stairs. You can't say I'm not going to take that next step because you got to get to the
Yeah.
top of the stairs. You know, you can't just stop in the midstream. It's like, well, you kind of
Yeah,
got to keep on going.
and I think every opportunity is an opportunity for you to decide which direction is you want to take, and I feel like the more clear you are on that, the more enjoyable the ride's going to be, and
Yeah, I think you have to be like comfortable
yeah,
in
very
yourself.
much.
Like a lot of times, the biggest problems I've read about is people who are kind of had insecurities that weren't
Yeah.
resolved.
Yep.
So if you had things that weren't resolved, and the fame
No,
doesn't
it just
help it.
enhances it. Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
enhances it. It causes it to
Yeah.
be worse. So if you don't handle those things, it's not
Oh
gonna
yeah.
fix
Well,
it.
it's like with everything, it's like in a relationship, if you're dating somebody and it's horrible, it ends horrible, and then you just jump into another relationship, usually it's, a same cycle of that last relationship you just had, and it's a continuous thing. Um, so it's just like,
Yeah, because sometimes the looking glass, like the
yeah,
issue is you.
exactly. Most times it is,
Yeah, it's not gonna change. You go to the next city, you're still that person
Exactly.
looking at the
Yeah,
looking glass. They didn't change because you're in Chicago versus you're in Los Angeles or you're in
exactly.
Nashville.
It's this,
That person's still there
yeah,
because it's
exactly,
you.
exactly. Like you still follow you, sadly, Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you can't run
yeah,
away from that. And, you can move to Alaska, but, all those same issues are just gonna be right there.
yeah. They're gonna keep on
Yeah.
popping up.
They,
Yeah, I think it's like that. A lot of the best, the musicians who've been able to kind of
yeah.
survive it are the ones that came to terms with their kind of own
Yeah.
issues, like their inner
Yep.
demons, figuring it out, because a lot of the thing I think part of the creative process is as artists we
Yeah.
use that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you use
Mm-hmm.
that pain, and as a creative person, you're able to express it in a way that a person that's not a creative
Yeah.
can't, and so that's your kind of talent is that you can take that pain, or you can take that joy, you can take that
Yeah.
feeling and translate it so other
Yeah.
people feel it.
And
And I think, yeah, that's your ability, but you have to be careful how bare that
I
leaves your
agree.
soul.
And I think too, it's like at a certain point, I feel like as artists and anybody creative, like you feel so deeply, and that's a scary thing. Um, and so a lot of times, people can lean to wanting to turn it off or shut it down or, and do things to kind of numb it, and which just creates a bigger
Yes.
problem, in the end.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things that like just to remind every creative is that like it's a gift that we can feel as intensely as we feel because a lot of people can't, and we're able to like use that and put it into something that can help them feel, and it
Yeah.
helps take the pressure off a little bit, Um, so
Yeah. I think you just have to realize that that's kind of then your
exactly,
calling and
yeah.
you've got it. And, that's why you're here, and you embrace it and you go with it and you learn how to do things in a more
Yeah.
healthy way for you. And now in this day and age, people know, better about like what's happened in the past and things that you can do to avoid
Yes.
doing the same story over and
Yeah, people are a lot more aware. Yeah. They're like, hmm.
over. So we
Yeah.
can see it. So I think it's always good for the younger people. I'm in my
Yeah.
50s, as I said. And being able to kind of teach that lesson that sometimes fame doesn't happen
No, it
overnight.
usually doesn't.
Sometimes no, if you go like look at guys like Bo Diddley and
Mm-hmm.
all the great like Chicago blues guys, a lot of them they were in their 40s when they
Mm-hmm.
became famous. They kept
Yeah.
on pushing it because they
Yeah.
just loved it. Blues guys and jazz guys, they keep on playing
Yep.
to the end, and it's not a young person's game for them. It's like
Yeah,
it's life.
exactly. Yeah. It's
And so like when you're in music, you don't have to have a prime age. You can
oh
keep
my
on
gosh,
growing.
yes.
You can keep on
Yeah.
writing.
And that's the thing too, like when you know that it's literally like your life force, there's nothing that can take that from you, that's your joy right there, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can keep on going until you don't have anything more to say.
exactly. Yeah. And quite literally, yeah.
So like in terms of the state of the music industry today, do you have any thoughts for like your own opinions about how things are going right now? I know with a lot of bands
Yeah.
are hurting because they can't play live venues, and that's really
Make
how a
money.
lot of us
Yeah.
get paid. Yeah, yeah,
Well, pre-COVID, um, I thought, it is such a cool time for music because, you literally can be whatever you want, make whatever you want. You don't have to put yourself in a box. You want to release it, you can release it. You know, you don't need a publisher or anybody to kind of, intro you to people that you want to collab with. Um, and that's like the really cool thing. But with COVID, yeah, with session players or people that had all their tours planned this year, like music events, like everything, that's such a
yeah,
heartbreaking. Um,
yeah. And all the
yeah,
support staff that normally, you know,
tour
that set up those
managers,
festivals,
yeah,
that do the
yeah,
lights. Yeah, we had to do all that.
yeah,
All the
lighting,
roadies,
everything.
all of the
Yeah,
people, the sound guys.
I
they haven't
know,
been
and
able to
that's
do anything.
heartbreaking. Like that, yeah.
And yeah, in the venues, some of them, the smaller venues, they might not be able to survive it if they can't get help. Um, if they
Oh
can't get
yeah,
help to keep the doors open, then we
there,
have to get
yeah,
less
there were
places to
very
play.
like historic like main places in LA that were almost going to be shut down if like people didn't pitch in and like help fund it, you know.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get more help
I
into
hope
2021
so.
with
Yeah,
some telethons or some kind of funding, because there's a lot of
me
venues I've been
too.
seeing more and
Yeah.
more about, tons of venues that need
Yeah.
immediate
Yeah.
assistance.
And I've had friends too, that have had a lot of like mental um yeah, because it's
Yeah, it's
just like
hard.
that's their living, you know. Um
I don't think a lot of musicians are not used to just staying in the house.
no, no.
We're kind of creatures
Yeah,
of the
and already
road,
highly
and
emotional people.
we're in
It's like,
they're used to being in
yeah,
that van and maybe
that's what I
being
mean. Yeah.
distracted by the yeah, and then maybe having too much time is not a
Yeah.
good thing for
Yeah.
some people. If you're a type of if you're a writer, then you got your stack of modes, and you can get
Exactly.
lost in
Yeah.
all your like all. I can get lost in all my
Yeah. Yeah.
electronic stuff with all
Yeah.
my synths, and that it gives me
Mhm.
more time to do that.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem, but I know guys are like, I got to be on stage
Yeah.
because I need that
Yeah.
crowd,
I do
you
too.
know,
Yeah.
and and that's hurting their kind of
I
psyche. They can't
know.
handle it. Um, so hopefully we get this vaccine and we get back on the road in 2021, and a lot of us get back out there. I mean, I actually finally got a booking agent
Oh,
for
amazing.
overseas right when they told me I can't go overseas. So it's like, oh, if I want to go to Berlin, I
Yeah.
want to go to London, and then I finally got the guy that can do it, because that's really what the kind of music I do. I have a better shot at playing at a club in Seoul
Yeah.
or in Shibuya in Tokyo, because people kind of get me in
Yeah.
those kind of places more. And then I had somebody that was going to get me there, and then boom, I
Yeah.
can't get there.
Oh man. Yeah. I can't even imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's but like I said, I don't mind sitting in my studio and just crafting more stuff. But I do want to get
Oh
on the road
yeah,
again, like anybody
definitely.
else.
Yeah,
But
I'm such a travel person. Like I hate being in one place for too long. I'm such like I need to be on the road and traveling. So yeah, I'm ready for that to open again.
well, it sounds like you're going to have a lot of cool stuff coming in
Yeah.
2021. So we always ask all of our guests. We've had people come on 3-4 times. So when you have like a big
Mm-hmm.
announcement on one of your projects, feel free to come on the
Oh, I
show
would love
and kind of do
that.
like a launch party. Yeah, we'd love to
Oh,
do that for you. We've done that for a bunch of bands in the last 2 years. So like if you got something, let us know what the
okay.
best time
Yeah,
for
I
that
would
is,
love
and
that.
we
Really.
could we could do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So we'd love to do that. We love hearing from
Yeah.
new artists all the time. So if you've got artists in
Yeah,
your orbit that you think would like to be on the show and
I
have their
will. I
story told,
definitely
let us
will.
know, and we'll
I will.
too.
Thank you so much. This has been such a good conversation, and I'm so happy that you found me and that we were able to talk. And yeah, and I look forward to talking even more.
Well, we're gonna put this together, like we said. One cool thing is we've got an integration on Instagram with the Spotify version of the podcast. So once we publish it, the highlight will go to the Spotify version. There's 11 different podcast platforms, but the one on Instagram that works well is the Spotify version of the show. And so we will put a link to that in our story, and it'll go right to it once it
Oh,
publishes in
wow.
the
Okay,
next hour or
cool.
two.
Sweet. I'm excited.
We'll send you that link when it's ready. We'll send you a link to like the Apple version, the Spotify version, and the Anchor version. As soon as they get ready, we actually are gonna. These aren't done live, so I'm gonna be putting together the segments and kind of fixing them and
like the
stringing them back together so
when
it
we
becomes a
when we
cohesive
lost connection the first two times.
Yeah. So that will get all sorted out, and we look forward to talking to you in 2021, and you have a safe 2020.
Yes, you too, and I'll definitely keep you updated.
Okay, thank you very much for being on the show.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye.